Help support Name Explain by liking this video, leaving a comment and subscribing to the channel. We all know the stories of Greek mythology, Zeus and the other gods sitting atop Mount Olympus observing the humans, the demigod of Hercules and his feats of strength and heroism, Jason and the Argonauts and their quest for the Golden Fleece, Icarus and his father using wings of wax to escape the labyrinth, only to see his demise by flying too close to the sun. These stories are beloved by so many and have been adapted and played out in so many ways, inspiring films, games and literary retellings, but these myths are just that. Myths. Ancient myths manifested themselves through all means. People used these stories to explain the otherwise unexplainable. In a time where science wasn't as developed as it is now, we simply couldn't understand how things like stars in the night sky happened, or how we got here in the first place. So many people believed it was divine intervention and created tales of magical beings who did all these things. Thus, mythology was born. Though perhaps sometimes myths would have begun with a grain of truth. Maybe in ancient Greece there was a particularly strong man by the name of Hercules, and from there his real story became the legend we know today. However these myths started, it's safe to say that they probably aren't real, true stories. But just because they aren't real doesn't mean that they haven't had a real impact in the world around us. Greek mythology has shaped so much of our planet, from popular culture to everyday things. A great example of this is with the medical symbol of two snakes entwined around a cane, sometimes with wings, and the single snake around a cane. These are called the caduceus and rod of Asclepius respectively. The first of these comes from Hermes, the messenger of the gods, and the other comes from Asclepius, the Greek demigod of medicine. And of course, with the aforementioned Hermes being the messenger of the god, it explains to us why the delivery company called Hermes too. So that's just two examples of how Greek mythology has shaped our world in big and small ways. And of course, most importantly for our interests, a plethora of words we use in English derive from Greek mythology too. And yes, some of these are pretty obvious, like how the adjective Herculean comes from Hercules, or how the name Atlas for a compendium of maps comes from the world-bearing titan of Atlas. And we all know the stories of Achilles and his weak heel, which gave us not only the term Achilles heel, but also the Achilles tendon in our feet. I want to talk about the everyday, average, unassuming words we use all the time that have roots in these tales of gods and heroes. Let's look into some of these words that you're probably not only well aware of, but you may have even used one of them this very day, and find out how exactly they originated from these tales thousands of years old. And yeah, some of these words aren't names. Shocking for a channel called Name Explain, I know, but many of them derive from the names of figures in Greek mythology, and their actions which led to their names being used and altered into words we all use today. And a great place to start is with the word chronology. And this is a great place to start as chronology means arranging into time order. This also created chronological and the term chronic, meaning something over a long time period. As these words all deal with time, it should be no surprise that it comes from Kronos, the Greek personification of time. He is seen as one of the oldest gods in Greek mythology, somewhat predating all the others, which makes sense as he is the personification of time after all. And in most mythologies, time is one of the first things created. He is often confused with the Greek god Kronos, the god of the harvest, and Zeus's father, as their names are similar, though that's just a coincidence. Something they probably would have both enjoyed, however, is nectar. This was the drink of choice for the Greek gods. It's thought to be a sweet, rich drink that gave the gods their immortality and strength. The word itself comes from the compounds of nec, meaning death, and tar, meaning overcoming, as this drink allowed the gods to overcome death. Over the years, as more research was put into plant life, the rich liquid produced by flowers to attract pollinating animals was studied more, and this liquid produced by flowers was called nectar too, in reference to the nectar of the gods. Nectar was primarily drunk by the gods and was not meant to be consumed by mortals, yet one non-god who tried to steal nectar from the gods was a king by the name of Tantalus, who was also one of Zeus's sons. However, he was a bit of a bad egg. As well as trying to steal nectar, he also stole a mythical golden dog, and at a banquet he served to the gods, he killed and fed his own son to them. For all these crimes he needed to be punished, and for trying to steal food and drink from the gods, they gave him a fitting punishment. Tantalus was made to stand chin deep in a lake of water, with trees bearing every fruit just above him. Every time he went for a drink of water, the water would move away from him, and every time he would reach for fruit, the branches would decline from him, meaning he wouldn't be able to eat or drink for all eternity. It's safe to say that the punishment for Tantalus was very tantalizing, and from his name and his punishment, we got the words tantalize and tantalizing. A word which comes from much pleasant roots is with the three minor gods of Agelaia, Thalia, and Euphrosyne. These three were the goddesses of things like beauty and kindness, and collectively they are known as the three charities. As these three dealt so much in kindness and cared for others, their collective name got applied to charities we have today, which are organisations that are established to help others. Two characters of Greek mythology who are linked together are Echo and Narcissus, who I'm sure you can see gave us the words of Echo and Narcissist. In Greek mythology, Echo was a nymph, and while she was one of the few people who didn't spend the night with Zeus, she did help Zeus in his misogynistic endeavours. Echo would spend huge amounts of time talking to Zeus's wife Hera to distract her, while Zeus spent time with others. Hera eventually figured this out, however, and in a rage cursed Echo so she could no longer speak her own words, but could only repeat the words others spoke around her. Narcissus was a young man and was seen as one of the most beautiful people to have ever lived. Many admired him, however, as Narcissus was so beautiful, there was only one person he had eyes for: himself. Yes, Narcissus fell in love with his own reflection, hence why the word narcissistic means having intense admiration of yourself. Echo eventually met Narcissus and of course fell in love with him immediately. She waited in a cave for him while he hunted in there, and when he sensed he was being watched, Narcissus said aloud, "Who's there?" And as Echo could only say what she had recently heard, she repeated, "Who's there? Who's there?" Echo finally revealed herself to him, and of course Narcissus rejected her. Heartbroken, Echo fled back to the mountain she came from, leaving just her voice repeating "Who's there?" in the cave. And that's why the repeating voices we hear in caves are called echoes. Moving on, the word phobia means fear. This word derives from the Greek god of fear, Phobos. And while we're at it, why don't we rattle off a few more of these words that come from more obvious god names. Like morphine, the drug that makes people sleepy, was named after the Greek god of sleep and dreams, Morpheus. The study of the brain is called psychology, and this comes from Psyche, the Greek goddess of the soul. And the word erotic comes from Eros, the god of love and sexual desire. While these seem pretty obvious, some argue that these etymologies are actually the other way round. These gods were named after these things. Either way, it's clear that these modern words and the Greek gods are linked. Another word that comes from a Greek god is heliotrope, which isn't as commonplace as the other words we've covered so far. This is the name for a kind of flower that moves throughout the day to face the sun and gather more light. The first half of their name comes from Helios. Helios is the Greek god of the sun, meaning it was his responsibility to bring light into the world. As these flowers are such big fans of sunshine, they were named after him. In fact, the word Helios did mean sun in Greek too, and the latter part of the flower name comes from the Greek tropos, meaning to turn, as they turn in the sunlight. A collection of 9 goddesses in Greek mythology were the Muses, and they ruled over things like art, poetry, dance, comedy, and even astronomy too. And while muse is a word we still use for someone who is inspiration to a creative person, the Muses gave us the Greek word music, which means art of the Muses. And this was eventually translated into English as music. So yes, even a word as commonplace and popular as music can have roots in Greek mythology. Ancient Greeks believed strongly in predestination, meaning they were not really in control of their lives but a higher power was, and they believed this higher power to be 3 goddesses known as the Moirai, or the 3 Fates. They are often seen as 3 old women, and their control over the lives of humans is represented through thread. Yes, they're those 3 from Disney's Hercules. Each of the 3 Fates had roles. One would choose how long the thread of life would be, one would decide when to cut the thread, and one would continuously spin the thread. That last goddess is called Clotho, and as she spent so much time weaving and spinning thread, we eventually use her name as the name for the material made out of thread, cloth. The English word of lethargy/lethargic means to feel tired, sleepy, fatigued, and even forgetful. This word comes from one of the rivers of the underworld, that being the Lethe, also known as the river of forgetfulness. The story goes that when in the underworld, drinking from this water would cause people to feel tired and even forgetful. So when people in ancient Greece were seen as being tired and forgetful, others thought they were acting like they're drunk from the Lethe, thus creating the term lethargic. It's also thought the word lethal may come from this river too, as it's linked with death, and lethal means resulting in death. Now these last few are kind of cheating, as they aren't from Greek mythology but Roman mythology. But as I'm sure many of you will know, Greek and Roman mythology are pretty much the exact same thing, just with different names, like how it's Ares in Greek and Mars in Roman, and Zeus in Roman mythology is called Jupiter. But Jupiter also went by a different name in Roman mythology too, Jove. Jove was seen as being a somewhat cheerful, friendly figure when he wasn't throwing thunderbolts at his enemies or trying to bed anyone, and acting in this way like Jove does became known as being jovial, hence where that word comes from. The Roman goddess of the moon is called Luna, and this is a word that is still heavily linked to the moon even to this day. However, I want to talk about another word this word created. The moon controls our tide, and in the past it was thought to be able to control the mental states of some people too, and it's believed that some people would have times of insanity depending on the cycle of the moon. These moon-based mad people became known as lunatics, which derives from the Roman name of the goddess of the moon, Luna. And finally, I want to end with something so mundane you wouldn't believe it came from such mighty origins. Cereal is eaten by millions every morning for breakfast. You may have had it yourself, but this word of cereal comes from the Roman goddess of agriculture, Ceres. As she helped Roman farmers so much with their growing and harvesting, their crops became named after her. Though, unfortunately, I don't think it was her idea to put the little toy in the box. Whoever that person was is the true god in my eyes. Thank you to all my patrons who support Name Explain on a monthly basis. Patreon is vital to Name Explain, and donating just $2 a month allows you to enjoy ad-free videos and bonus Patreon exclusive content. It also allows you to help choose what names get explained in upcoming videos, and gets your name here with all these awesome people. Thank you so much for all the support you guys give Name Explain. Hello all, and thank you so much for reaching the end of the video. Check out another video and subscribe to stay in the loop on all things Name Explain. You can find me on Twitter where I'm at NameExplainYT. On Instagram I'm also NameExplainYT, and on Facebook just search Name Explain. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and once again thank you all so much.